Any moment now, President Trump will address a crowd of supporters in Melbourne, Florida, in what the White House is calling a campaign rally. Thousands of people are waiting to hear the president speak in an airport hangar after a tumultuous week in Washington. Trump is searching for a new national security advisor to replace Michael Flynn, who resigned after misleading the vice president about his pre-inauguration calls with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. FBI Director James Comey also briefed the Senate Intelligence Committee Friday on the agency's investigation into Russian interference in the U.S. election. And I want to bring back my panel, CNN political commentators Ryan Lizza, Alice Stewart, and Mark Lamont Hill. All right, let's listen to what Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said again today about reports of Russian interference in the election.
I have
not seen one fact breaking into a site, any site of the Democratic Party, nor as far as France, Germany, Italy are concerned.
Alice Stewart, what do you make of those comments after the events of this week?
Of course he's going to say that, and he'll deny it until we have evidence to prove otherwise. All we can say is that based on what we're seeing and hearing from members of the Senate Intel Committee who came out of that meeting with James Comey this week, we had Senator Marco Rubio come out and pretty unequivocally say they have what they need to have further hearings on this. And all of them, understandably, were tight-lipped about the information that was provided to them. It's certainly classified information. But the fact that they are even contemplating and discussing further hearings is concerning, and it does lead you to believe that there was Russian hacking and that did influence possibly the outcome of the election. How you determine how it impacted the election will be difficult if they can even do that. But I think the bigger concern with this is that, unfortunately for the Trump administration, there's so many different roads that lead back to Russia. And that's a problem. Certainly we just had, the Flynn situation, and now this, and now concerns about campaign collusion. That's a concern. But with regard to Comey and Russian hacking, clearly there is some there, which is why we're going to see more investigation from the Senate.
And Jeffrey, right now, as we speak, there is a Russian spy ship just off the coast of Delaware. The Russians also deployed a cruise missile in apparent violation of a 1987 INF treaty. Sergei Lavrov also spoke of a, quote, post-West world order calling NATO an institution of the Cold War, as Vice President Mike Pence issued a statement of strong support for the transatlantic alliance. Jeffrey Lord, is Russia trying to test President Trump, and how should President Trump respond to this? Oh, Jeffrey is not here. All right, I'm going to go to you, Mark Lamont Hill. What do you think about that?
Well, first, I get confused with Jeffrey Lord all the time. It's like strike.
I know, you guys are this. You guys are just alike. Everything you say and do and think.
I think this is an important moment for Donald Trump and his administration. He ran with a level of proximity to Russia, both in terms of the Russian government's perception, but also many Americans' perception. He said, I want to have a better relationship. He wanted to sort of reset, to use that language again, the relationship with Russia. And it looked like he was going to be much closer. What we've seen in the last 3 to 4 weeks is a relationship to Russia and a posture toward Russia, which is far more consistent with other folk. And this isn't that different than other foreign policy relationships that President Trump has offered. He was very much closer to Benjamin Netanyahu, and then in the last week or two, he makes a different decision on settlements, or at least a different claim on settlements that's more traditionally in line with U.S. policy. So he's beginning to move more in a traditional manner on those two issues, and I think it's making Russia somewhat uneasy. So what President Trump has to do, I believe, is to sort of shore up his relationship with Russia without compromising the trust and investment of NATO, without compromising the trust of the American people. And as Alice said, there's a lot of there. So there are lots of reasons to have a fundamental distrust of Trump's relationship to Russia. So we need some clarity, we need a light shine on that, and we need some sort of answer from an outside investigative body.
All right. I imagine that's the first time you were ever mixed up with Jeffrey Lord. Mark Lamont Hill, thanks for that. Now, as you were talking, Air Force One pulling up there at that airport hangar in Melbourne, Florida. President Trump making his grand entrance for what his staff is calling a campaign rally. Just less than a month of being in office, he's there with a large crowd awaiting his arrival. And as we await for him to go down those stairs, I want to just quickly ask you, Ryan, what do you make of Marco Rubio's tweet yesterday after that FBI Director Comey briefing with the Intelligence Committee? He said, I am now very confident Senate Intel Committee I serve on will conduct a thorough bipartisan investigation of Putin interference and influence. Interference and influence. What do you make of that tweet?
You know, it's very interesting because two things are going on. One, it's Rubio saying that he wants the Intelligence Committee to do this investigation, which is not what a lot of high-profile Democrats and Republicans want. People like John McCain and Lindsey Graham want a select committee, something outside of the current committee structure, an independent committee to do that, because frankly a lot of people are worried if it's done by the Intelligence Committee, you know, it'll be invisible. The Intelligence Committee is not as open and public for obvious reasons, and a select committee could have a stronger and wider mandate. So that's one thing. He wants it to be done in-house on the Intelligence Committee. But on the other hand, he obviously in that tweet made a very strong case for what the intelligence community has said. Right before Barack Obama left office, the intelligence community put out a unanimous report that the public version of the report was light on details, but they confirmed that Russia instituted an influence campaign during the 2016 election, and it came from the highest levels of the Russian government. I believe the report named Putin as instructing his intelligence services to do this. So he's fully on board with the fact that this actually happened, contrary to what Mr. Lavrov said in those comments you played. So I think it's for people who want a thorough investigation. That is encouraging. I still think that this is a serious enough issue that something more along the lines of the 9/11 Commission, an independent, thorough body, should do this, because I think it's less likely that politics will get involved. But it's clear from that tweet that Rubio is taking this very seriously.
And also the FBI's. Go ahead.
Pam, I wanted to follow up on one thing with regard to the Russian ship off the coast, and a comment that Mark responded to about the ship. My understanding is that the plans for the ship to come to these waters have been in the works for quite some time, several months ago, before any president was named. So this idea for provoking the president could have been done for either one, whether it was Hillary Clinton that won or Donald Trump. So it was clear that the Russian government planned to try and intimidate or try and provoke whoever the new president was from the very beginning. And they're just testing the water, so to speak, out there. But Donald Trump made it quite clear that he's paying attention to it, keeping a close eye on it. But it's one thing that clearly they're both playing tit for tat, and it'll be interesting to see how we respond. But Mike Pence, I think, was very clear today that Russia is going to face the strong arm of the United States government if need be.
And as we await President Trump to go down those stairs at Air Force One and speak to that large crowd inside the airport hangar in Melbourne, Florida, Alice, what do you think we're going to hear from him? I mean, we've seen this from past presidents where they come out when they haven't been in office that long to speak to crowds, but normally there's a specific reason. With Barack Obama, it was to talk about the stimulus package, and later on about Obamacare, and other presidents have also had specific reasons. For this, what do you make of this, and what do you expect to hear, Alice?
I expect it to be similar to the message he drove home to supporters in South Carolina. Of course, that was geared more towards military and technology, given that it was at Boeing, but it will be an opportunity for him to rally the crowd, show him as confident, and I think more than anything, I think the dynamics of this event are more important to him than the actual words, and the visuals of a confident, strong, engaged president are more important than the actual words that he says. He will reinforce Buy American, Hire American, and his commitment to securing the border, his commitment to repealing and replacing Obamacare, and in Florida, that's a big issue for Floridians. And jobs, jobs, jobs. I worked for Rick Scott, and if I had a dime for every time he said jobs, it was a big deal in Florida. So his commitment to creating jobs and creating an environment for businesses to grow and build the workforce is big for people in Florida, and I expect to see those messages.
Ryan, what do you make of this? It has been a rocky road the last few weeks when you look at what happened to his travel ban, when you look at what happened to his national security advisor, Mike Flynn, and his resignation this past week, and reports of chaos in the White House. How do you think all of that plays into this campaign event in Florida?
Yeah, look, I think he's going to use this, probably similar to what he used the press conference for the other day, is to basically push back against these reports that his administration is off to a poor start. I think that's one of the reasons he likes to have sort of unfiltered access to the airwaves, is to make his case, have us not talking about all of the problems that he's having. Look, I've covered, several administrations now. This is on an order of magnitude worse than the first weeks of the Obama administration, the Bush administration, or the Clinton administration. And the Clinton administration probably had the roughest early opening. We don't have a functioning National Security Council. That's a big deal. National Security, the NSC formulates and coordinates all of American foreign policy. We don't have anyone running it. That's bad. We have a White House that has at least 4 people on the top layer without any single person in charge. Historically, that kind of White House structure has not produced good results. There's a long, academic history about what kind of White House staffing works, and the best, having a strong chief of staff is usually the best. So, and it's obviously had an impact. The executive orders have been rolled out without being vetted by the proper agencies, which left it open to that legal appeal on the immigration one. So, this is a chance for him to make a contrary argument, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And here we see First Lady Melania Trump and the President walking down the steps of Air Force One to the airport hangar. This is sort of reminiscent of what we saw during the campaign when he would go to these big rallies on his private jet, pull up there, walk down the steps to a big crowd. Of course, this time it's Air Force One because he is president, and he has been in the White House for less than a month, but his aides say that he wanted to come out and be a part of what they are dubbing this campaign rally. And so as we await to hear what he has to say, there is a large crowd there, but there has also been protesters, demonstrators across the street from where President Trump is speaking. And our America caught up with one of them earlier today.
We did this in the 60s, but I felt compelled to come, even though I was a little frightened, because this is not always an easy thing. But I don't want the world to think that this gentleman represents how we feel about immigrants, about our environment, about our justice system, about people from abroad, because I'm embarrassed and I'm afraid. I've never been afraid.
So there you heard a bit of a dichotomy there in Melbourne. A large crowd of thousands, as we were told by our reporters on the ground inside that airport hangar. But obviously you have protesters like the woman you heard before trying to make their voices heard. And with President Trump's presidency less than a month in, I want to just go to Mark Lamont Hill, who has also been watching this. Mark, what do you hope to hear from the president as we await his words very shortly from now?
I hope to, at this moment, hear some word of unification and some word of explanation and clarification. That is to say, it's past the election. You've won. There shouldn't be a 38% approval rating in February, particularly when very little has happened legislatively. I need you to speak to the other 62% who are not approving of the job that's been done so far. I need some level of transparency about what's going on. I need some level of humility to say, hey, we've hit a few rough patches, but we're on track, we're on target. And I'd like to hear some concrete policy ideas that allow people to say, hey, he's not just tweeting, he's not just responding, he's not just assailing the media, but he's actually trying to move his agenda forward. I think that is what we should expect. I think this rally, though, is not about that. I think it's about being somewhat of a security blanket and comfort zone for the president. He's had a rough week. He's had a lot of bad news come through. He's had a lot of things that he couldn't control through the media. And his typical response is to lash out through Twitter and other forms of media.